All right, let's call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners for October 24th, 2017. Would you all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just take a moment of silence, please. Thank you. So I've not received any additions or changes to the agenda. Does anyone have one? No. If not, I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda as is.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Public comments. Kat Lee?
My name is Kat Lee. I live at 309 Summerlid Way. The question before the board tonight as far as Union Day Charter School goes is a lot simpler, I think, than some of our town conversations make it seem. No one is asking you to decide if a charter school is or isn't a public school. It is. No one's asking you to avow undying support for charter schools and the very existence of them. They're already here, and they are serving over 300 of our children. Tonight, you're being asked to rule on one small matter for one of Waxhaw's public schools. The question that Union Day has put before you could as easily have been asked by any of the other schools. So what if we switch out the names and see if that makes things any easier? Let's say that it's Waxhaw Elementary that comes before you and says the following. Our students are kind of cramped. We'd like a trailer so we can give them a little more room to spread out. Here's the documentation to show that this trailer is safe, inspected, insured, and safe for children. Here's the documentation to show that the site for this trailer has been checked, inspected, and is safe for these children. Do we then provide them with the permission to have this mobile unit? Or do we stop and say, yes, but is the building pretty? The only real issues that should matter when a school wants a trailer are, do they need it? Can they fund it? Is it safe? If the answers to all three of those questions is yes, then how can we, in good conscience, deny children something that can improve their education? Because we don't necessarily like the color of the siding or the shape of the roof. Educating our children is the single most important task, possibly, of any parent or any community. We owe it to these children to do for them anything that they can. We owe any school the support that they ask for. They shouldn't have to fight for it. They shouldn't have to hire lawyers to get it. It's what we, as responsible people, owe our community, our schools, and our children. And I'd like to see us give that support to these children. Thank you.
Thank you. Elena Moore?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Helena Moore. My address is 2700 Maryville Way. I'm here tonight to speak to something that's very close to me, and that is the drugs that's here in Waxhaw. And I'm really asking the commissioners to put this as a leading charge for 2018. My son uses marijuana. I have brought him to the Waxhaw police to turn him in myself. I feel as though the buyer is just as guilty as the seller. But what I'm learning is it's so rampant in this town. The police officer, the school resource officer, everyone seems to know who are the local drug dealers, but yet nothing's being done. I have taken screenshots. I see the drugs. It's impacting all age ranges. I saw something that was so disturbing. That's why I'm here tonight. There was a child who was in the 6th grade. His sibling decided to get him high. This kid was passed out in some field, or they say that these kids go on these trails. I think that this should be something that is paramount for 2018. My son, I think I have a good handle on. You know, people say, oh, it's just marijuana. Marijuana is a gateway drug that leads to other things. I know the mayor went and spoke to the high school. It wasn't widespread, because I only found out about it because I thought I was still having to be this training for being on a town board. So I just want to know, what are your thoughts? What are some of the corrective actions you have in place? I'm going to save my child, but there's a lot of parents who are confused, and this isn't isolated to one family. This is impacting many, many families. Do a child have to die before some corrective action takes place? That's all I have.
Thank you. Elena, what I will say, attended the Union County Public School opiate abuse session a couple of weeks ago. And what you say is 100% accurate. And it is alarming what they had to present, but also very educational. And there's a couple more sessions like that occurring in the Western Union County area, and I would encourage everybody to attend it. Attendance, unfortunately for the Waxhaw side, was less than 40 people. Marvin filled the auditorium with 700. We have the same problems that every other community does, and it was very, very sobering. Thank you for that. All right, consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next up, Ann Sutton. First quarter financial report.
Good evening, everyone, Mayor and Board of Commissioners. This is going to be very brief. It's just an opportunity to let you know where we are at this point in time as compared to previous years. We're looking at our first quarter. We're talking about our fiscal quarter, which is July, August, and September, when we're looking at these graphs. And I am using 5 years worth of data here to give you an idea of showing you basically that we're on track. It kind of basically shows that we are continuing a growth in the town of Waxhaw, which isn't unusual. Again, this first slide is for ad valorem taxes. It is showing July, August, September as a comparison from 2013 to current 2017. That spike in 2013, I'm just assuming from what I could look at in our data that people were starting to feel good again. The recession was starting to fall off, and we had some big payments right there at the beginning for tax payments, and that really spiked up there pretty high. But as you'll see, basically going through 14 through 17, that it's been just about 16% increase over going through each year with our ad valorem taxes. Let's see, there was remember in 2015 we did have a revaluation, but we also increased our tax rate from 34 cents to 36 cents, which kept us on track with our growth. On the next slide with our motor vehicle tax revenue, also we're looking at July, August, and September as comparisons. And in 2014, the state of North Carolina decided to start tax and tag together. And that has helped all municipalities greatly in the fact that the state is billing each citizen who has an automobile or a wheeled vehicle or wheeled, maybe a trailer. The state is billing for the city taxes along with the tag itself. So for the most part, we're getting a high percentage of our money each month from this, much better than it used to be. We used to be maybe at 85% collection rate on our tags. Now we're running at 97, 98%, so it's been a great thing. Going into our sales tax revenue, you can see that that is about a 10% average increase over the years. Going into 2015, franchise tax for natural gas and for electricity moved over into a sales tax. So we're no longer, the state is no longer collecting franchise tax from those utilities, but they're collecting sales tax. But still, once again, the growth has been pretty constant. So we can be happy about that. But with the franchise tax revenue, there's that spike in 2015. This is where they were making that move from the electric and the natural gas, moving from having a franchise fee over into being charged a sales tax. And the state had to make up do some adjustments there. So that's why there's a spike in 2015 for those months. But you'll see that it kind of normalized out in 2016. There's not been, or 2016 to 2017, there's been no real growth on that. So, ending in my brief presentation, as of September 30th of 2017, our overall revenue collections are at 18%, which we haven't even hit our big volume yet. We're just starting. Our taxes are starting to come in. And for our overall expenses for 2017, for the 3 months, July, August, and September, we're right where we should be at 25% of our expenses overall. Do you have any questions?
I'd like to make a comment if I could. I would like to appreciate you and the tax team of collecting the taxes from the town, because you do a phenomenal job. You're always up in the very high 90s in tax collection rate. And I know it's not an easy job to do, so thank you.
We do have a great tax team, and I give Paula Key a lot of credit. She's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Commissioner reports. Commissioner Fitzgerald.
I don't have anything tonight, thank you.
Commissioner Warner.
Today's a special day. I've been married 42 years today.
Congratulations.
My bride's not here, but she appreciates me.
Commissioner Burns.
Thank you.
Let's get on with the public hearing then. At this time, we will entertain a motion to resume the public hearing for Carrollton Town Center Modular Classroom Edition CU 006-3333-2017. Entertain a motion.
So move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. At this point, I think Attorney Spencer has some housekeeping matters.
Yes, and this is going to be brief. Just want to remind everyone that this is still a public hearing. If you're a witness and we're sworn in, you're still under sworn in testimony. And also to the board members, earlier you stated that you didn't have a fixed opinion that was not susceptible to change, and you could be fair and impartial and base your decision upon the information submitted at the public hearing, and that includes tonight. And I would like to get each of you, and you can do it, to confirm that your stance on that has not changed, that each of you can remain to be fair and impartial and base your decision on the evidence presented tonight. Can each one of you do that?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and also, has there been any ex parte or any communication outside the public hearing pertaining to the application that you've had that needs to be disclosed?
No.
No, sir.
Nothing.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, Lisa McCarter.
All right. I guess the presentation has taken a minute to come up. Yeah. Okay, just very briefly, I'll go back over a summary of it. It's a proposed modular classroom building on the Forest Hill Church property behind the parking lot. Here's an aerial of the property. It's just north of Kensington Drive. The property property was approved under a conditional use permit for the Cureton Town Center development in 2003. It has Cureton design guidelines that were a condition of approval, and it was approved under the 2002 UDO. So I'll just tell you some of the requirements that are still unmet. There was many of the requirements that were met with the new submittal. This is the site as shown on the 2003 Cureton Town Center conditional use permit plan, which denotes shopfront, I think I have the wrong page, sorry, which denotes shopfront retail and office uses for the site that are pedestrian oriented and line the street. There were no principal buildings shown that did not have street frontage or access. Shops are shown as fronting on Kensington Drive. This is the approved cross-section for Kensington Drive at the top left. The proposed modular classroom building does not front the road. You can see it's located in the back of the parking lot. The site also still does not meet the purpose and intent of the Cureton design guidelines. This is an example of a building that would be approved under the Cureton design guidelines. It requires buildings over 60 feet wide to be broken down into a series of smaller elements or bays and roofed to match the rhythm of the historic shop fronts. It's not broken down into smaller elements or bays. Also, it requires architectural grade laminated asphalt or composition shingles for roofs, and the proposed roof does not meet that requirement. Architectural controls note 2 on the Cureton Town Center plan requires a minimum of 50% of the material used for the front and side elevations to be predominantly brick, and it does not meet this requirement. The Cureton guidelines also require the HVAC units to be located or screened to prevent view from within, outside the site, and from the street, and shall not be located along the front or side elevations of any building that faces the street. Ground screening should be of a solid fence or wall in keeping with the building or native plant materials. The HVAC units aren't screened, and you can see the red arrows pointing to the HVAC units. According to the Cureton Commercial Mixed Use and Multifamily Guidelines, building site and streetscape, primary building facade should be parallel to the sidewalk, except where it is desired to maintain a highly desirable vista. The proposed building does not meet this requirement. The future land use plan from the Waxhaw Comprehensive Plan Policy Bridge document shows the property as X2 existing commercial center. And it has pedestrian-oriented streetscapes, so it doesn't meet this requirement. There was several questions raised about the timeline at the October 10th meeting, so I just wanted to briefly go over the timeline. The top timeline is the regular timeline for a major conditional use permit amendment schedule, which is approximately 82 days. The application is submitted 45 days prior to the planning board, giving staff 2 rounds of a review, and then the planning board deadline is 2 weeks before the planning board so that staff can prepare the staff report. Then it goes to the planning board for recommendation, and the same plan goes to the Board of Commissioners for public hearing, and then at their next meeting, the Board of Commissioners has a decision. The Cureton Modular Classroom Major Conditional Use Permit has been expedited to approximately a 55-day schedule. The application was submitted 19 days prior to Planning Board. Staff reviewed and prepared the Planning Board packet. It went to the Planning Board meeting for recommendation, and then there was another submittal in between the Planning Board and Board of Commissioners meeting, which is not typical. And then it went to public hearing, and now we have a continuation of the public hearing and possible decision. Staff recommends denial of the proposed major conditional use permit amendment. In 2003, the Board of Commissioners and the applicant for Cureton Town Center agreed upon Cureton design guidelines and Cureton Town Center conditional use permit plan as a condition of approval. In addition to the conditional use permit requirements, the proposed major amendment for a 7,872 square foot modular classroom building is not compliant with the conditional plan, guidelines, nor future land use plan. And so here's just a quick rundown. There was some new fire marshal comments that were generated off the gravel drive. And also in my staff report, I had put that the Union County Fire Marshal has to approve the site plan. Now that we have the Waxhaw Fire Marshal, the Union County Fire Marshal has given her authority over review of the site plan. And so she's here tonight. If you have any questions about sprinklers or apparatus or anything like that, she can answer your questions. In approving an application for a conditional use permit, the Board of Commissioners may attach fair and reasonable conditions to approval. The petitioner will have a reasonable opportunity to consider and respond to any additional requirements prior to approval or denial by the Board of Commissioners. There needs to be a motion to recommend approval, approval with conditions, or denial. And then a statement of reasonableness and consistency must be read. I kind of went over this last time, but there's a third option for our statement, that it can be consistent with the comprehensive plan and future planning goals, inconsistent, or it can amend the comprehensive plan and a change in conditions result in the request meeting the development needs of the community. And so that's all the new information I had. If anybody has any questions, and the applicant's here too.
Attorney Spencer?
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned the timeline. It seemed like it's been going on. Weren't there some other applications, and can you briefly talk about those and what is before the board?
Okay. In June 12th, 2017, the applicant submitted a major amendment application for modular units, but it wasn't a complete submittal. On July 14th, 2017, the applicant submitted for a minor amendment to allow increased enrollment within the church facility, and that was granted prior to school beginning. And then on August 30th, this current request has come in for the modular classroom building.
Okay, and this is the only one that has come before the board?
Correct.
And this is the only one, this only application is the only one that they will be making a decision on tonight, correct?
Correct.
Got another question. The prior public hearing, 922 was mentioned a few times in the UDO, and that was regarding the Union County Public Schools. I believe your staff analysis indicated it was not applicable. Can you just go over that briefly for the public and the board so they can hear that?
Yeah, I'll just read what was in my staff report. Section 9.22 of the current UDO regards Union County Public School zoning regulations and allows provisions for mobile classroom units for Union County Public Schools. Union Day School is a charter school that's not in the Union County Public School system, and it was verified by Union County Public Schools. Section 9.22 was not included in the 2002 UDO under which this Puritan Town Center was approved. The ordinance in effect at the time, so it wasn't in the ordinance in effect at the time of approval, and Section 9.22 was added to the UDO in 2008 through a text amendment that was created through Union County Public Schools collaboration with local governments in Union County, outlining a strict site selection process which ends with approval by the Union County Board of Election for citing Union County Public Schools along with associated requirements. Union Day School, not being a part of the Union County Public School system, did not go through the site selection process and was not approved by the Union County Board of Education. So those are the reasons why 9.22 doesn't go.
Thank you. And the applicant did say they were using that for basically harmony, not for the application, but there was some discussion, so I wanted to get that clarification. And I just have one more question for you. Would you like to submit the amended staff analysis staff report, including the memo dated October 19th, 2017, with exhibits and evidence?
Yes.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
Additional questions from the board?
Let me just clarify what, Chaplain, you all just said about the site selection process. That's what makes us different. They have to go through, Union County has to go through the process in the Board of Education and select this site. That's what makes them different from them.
That is, and that's why it's before you tonight.
Okay.
Now, staff has followed their UDO, and so this does have to come. One, it's not a Union County Public School site. It didn't go through their site selection. It didn't go through the staff approval or recommendation and analysis. There's also an existing conditional use permit on the site, so it had to follow this path. So it is before you, staff had requested for it to go through the process.
So Lisa, looking at your memorandum here dated October the 19th, you went through and listed the safety conditions for considerations, and then it looks like here in red, you have given the answers or what was addressed. Is that correct, what I'm looking at here?
Yes.
Okay. And it appears like probably 75% were addressed, with the exception of, I guess, the physical look, including the architecture of it being building materials and so forth. Is that correct?
There was some issues with the gravel drive that needed to be addressed, and also on the building plans themselves, not the site plan, but the building plans, there had been an expiration for the engineering seal.
Is that pertinent to what's before us
No, but it will just have to be corrected when we go through
for
the
future?
process.
Okay, but it's not pertinent for what we're here for.
Could I address that a little bit? Being as I'm a licensed engineer myself, I mean, I looked it up on the licensing board. He is a licensed engineer. I believe the question is that it was dated 2011, which is the previous building code. The new building code came in 2012, which it should be a non-issue.
Chaplain, you, at the last hearing, conditions were laid out, or some conditions. Could you review those so we don't get confused?
I can try, and I'm relying on staff because Lisa has done so well. With her initial staff report dated October 10th, there were 18 conditions if the board wanted to grant the permit that were recommended. 1 through 13, if you look on her memo that was submitted in evidence, 1 through 13 were incorporated into the plans, and that's with the red notations, leaving 14 through 18, which are primarily architectural design, as Mayor Pro Tem Hunt mentioned. There's some other conditions that the applicant may agree to that were discussed. I always like to throw in a catch-all that would address the engineer, just that they will comply with all UDO, state, and local rules and requirements. There was some discussion about a paint color that could be added. There was also some discussion about some screening of the HVAC units with some lattice that could be done. And although the permit is fairly express, we could also add a condition, just an end date, that the modular unit will be removed by the deadline. I think that's already been agreed upon by the parties, but just the July 31st, 2018, or if properly extended, July 31st, 2019. And if you look at the planning staff recommendation on the new memo, she has, Lisa sets forth the safety conditions for consideration 1 through 6 with subparts, and those could be included. Those incorporate all of those changes, and then you could add any of the additional conditions that the board may want to incorporate that I just mentioned, or any others. But once again, we do need to discuss any conditions with the applicant and make sure that they consent to the conditions.
Any other conditions from the board?
So there's a additional condition for consideration of a 1-year extension of the July 31st, 2018 timeline to July 31st, 2019 shall be permitted through an administrative minor conditional use permit amendment. anything past extension of the timeline beyond July 31st, 2019 shall require a major conditional use permit amendment that shall follow the conditional use permit schedule outlined in section 14.1 of the UDO. To me, that condition, offering up if the applicant is interested, demonstrates that staff and this board, if we are interested in that, is interested in. So the original application says that they will be out in 7 months. And that's considering how long it takes to get it placed, get it up and running, and by the end of July. I think that, I don't know how feasible that is. I don't know what their building schedule is, their moving schedule is, but I think that if we put this in, this offers them another year and an out. If their plans don't come together, if something happens, that it doesn't come out that way, they've got another year to maintain that. And I think that's certainly a reasonable condition on our part if they're willing to go with that.
And we may want to ask the applicant to confirm that they agree with these conditions, and we can either go one by one, or they can agree that to all the conditions in the plans, obviously, and the safety conditions 1 through 6. Maybe we can get a confirmation, and that is from the planning staff memo. And I know y'all may, if y'all have to take a recess and handle any of this, but I think most of these were discussed prior.
So just Ty Schaefer again, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you very much. We have folks here who are authorized to make decision on these conditions tonight, so we can recess and consider and discuss, have a conversation about any concerns we have about particular conditions. I would, like to take a few minutes. I know there are still some points in the staff analysis, a contention that that perhaps it should be denied. Just like to address that to make the record complete. So we've got that. I'm happy to proceed however you all would like to do so this evening.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but, the one problem I have with this here is the finding of fact. And, we're a government of laws, and, Mr. Attorney, you spoke about how this doesn't apply because it's not really, you are a school, but you're not a public school. And the people that are currently, is this a proper time to say this?
If you're going to get into deliberation about the merits, we should probably do that after the public hearing. But
that's
if you
what
have,
I thought.
Yeah, if you have questions,
Well,
but something can be supplemented, you can ask the applicant. Or
It really
planning
doesn't
staff.
come down, it just comes to the merits, whether this or that. It's okay, that's what I thought. I was jumping the gun here.
Just to be clear, they are a public school.
Yeah.
They are a public school.
But they are,
North Carolina law is settled on that point.
right, they're not part of the Union County, they didn't go through the
But
selection
by
of the
state
site
law,
and go,
state law, they're a public school.
okay.
That's,
And with permission, and I don't want to interrupt you all if you have questions, but I would like to just make a couple of comments because you did point back to the findings of fact, and I do think that we do need to visit that really briefly in response to staff analysis as part of the hearing.
let me just finish this part, and we'll bring you back up,
Okay.
sir. Any other, because they have to deliberate on conditions. Chaplain's laid out the conditions. They've made it very clear that the architectural ones are not, and understood completely. Are there any other conditions that all of you would like them to consider?
Yes.
Yours was stated,
And another one.
okay?
Also, the approval of this major conditional use permit amendment allows for one 7,872 square foot modular classroom building. Additional modular classroom buildings or structures shall require a major conditional use permit amendment that shall follow the conditional use permit schedule outlined in section 14.1 of the UDO. So I guess with that condition, if we were to approve this unit, it's for this unit only, not for multiple units. And that's what that's asking for, correct?
That's correct, and I believe that has already been incorporated into the plans. So they have submitted that, but
Okay.
it is good to get confirmation, because that's a material term.
Commissioner Fitzgerald?
I'm not sure if it's in there or not. There's so much redlining here. Does it spell out that the property will go back to revert back to its original order at the ending date? It doesn't spell that out.
There's an erosion control set of notes on the plan now, and it does say that it will go back to its original state once removed.
Including removal of the gravel driveway?
So no additional conditions.
And what guarantee do we have that that building will be removed at that such time?
The guarantee we have typically is the traditional enforcement. And the traditional enforcement is we notify, and then it's a $500 a day fine after the period of time. I'm in the ballpark, correct?
You are. It's
Yeah.
$500 a day.
Yeah, that's the guarantee. And that would be directed to the applicant, not the lessor.
I'd have to look at that. Might even it would
Come
come
to
to
you.
the applicant, and
Okay.
they would be the primary responsible party.
Okay.
But they would have a notice period, but if they don't cure within that, each day is a violation at $500 a day.
Okay. So just to be clear, the guarantee, which is the traditional zoning, assuming they've submitted an application for July 31st, 2018. If they're not out, they don't submit an application to extend, it goes through the normal code enforcement directed towards the applicant. It's pretty straightforward, right?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions before we call the attorney back up, just to clarify? Come on up.
You got a sneak preview a second ago. I guess the first thing I'll do really quickly while he's standing up here is to get Will Berkeley. I know the issue of timing and commitment to getting this off the space has come up. Can you just, state on behalf of the church's position on this deadline and intention to make sure that all the parties stick to this commitment to remove by the date certain?
Absolutely. Just a little bit of background. We built this church so that we could have a preschool in there. So at some point in time in the not too crazy distant future, we'd like to have a preschool in there. So once Union Day came to us, we told them that we would be willing to allow them to have the space for 3 years. So Forest Hills committed to not renewing their lease after the end of school, June 2019. Now currently, we only have an agreement with them through June 2018, but we are willing to extend that 1 year. But after that 1 year, the church will not have space for Union Day School.
Thanks, Will.
And we won't be using the modular unit for any church purpose as well. So the modular unit will not have a use and is being leased by the school, so they'll need to take that with them wherever they're going.
But no, as if the threat of divine retribution for the church wasn't enough. I'm glad we did discuss the traditional enforcement mechanisms the town has for any land use question. You have recourse to those here as well. A couple of things that did come up, and I don't want to belabor them because I don't think, frankly, they're relevant to the consideration before the board tonight. One of them, kind of the timing of the process. I mean, I do think that that my clients would quibble with any suggestion they've been anything less than diligent in trying to move things forward and cooperative. So if there are concerns the board has, we have people here that can address that and calm any concerns. But we certainly don't want that impression to cloud anybody's judgment, relevant or irrelevant, tonight. So I've put back on the screen the 4 findings of fact. And I want to point us back there because that is the task before the board, This is what you must consider. You must consider the evidence before you. You must consider the fact that no one has shown up to present evidence that controverts the showing that the applicant has made. We believe respectfully that at the October 10th hearing, we satisfied our burden to present competent, substantial, and material evidence that the applicant meets all four of these findings of fact. So I'm not going to rehash that, which I'm sure you're glad to hear. The staff analysis includes a few new comments, but it largely mirrors what we saw in the October 10th report. We discussed the 18 points. We discussed the fact that 13 of those conditions for consideration have been satisfied in the site plan. So I don't know that they're really conditions anymore, but they're commitments the applicant has made as part of the site plan. But we don't believe that any of the new points that have been identified in the staff analysis really at all change the conclusion we think the board has to reach, and that's that it must approve this amendment. It's not a discretionary matter if these four findings have been satisfied. I'll point first to the fact that staff analysis importantly no longer contends in this iteration that the proposed modular classroom building is not allowed under the 2002 UDO. That's significant and material because that takes finding of fact number 1 off the table. There is no dispute before you that this is a use that is eligible, that this is a structure that's eligible under the UDO in effect at that time. So that's a significant change that we think you need to consider. Second, as I mentioned, on October 10th and subsequently, the applicant was agreed to accommodate all of the recommendations for consideration except for the architectural considerations, which I think, I've made that point several times now, that's why your ordinance allows a procedure for amending a conditional use permit. That's why we're here asking you for this amendment, is because we can't satisfy those. And so that's why we're here for a second night. Some of the new points we think confuse permitting with this amendment process, and I think some of the board's questions have hit on this fact. Those are two separate considerations, and this applicant will have to go through the permitting process for this building, and so that some of the notes on the fire marshal's report that request certain notes on the site plan, I think the applicant's willing to do that. So 3B, and I'm pointing here to the list under number 3 on pages 2 and 3 of the staff analysis, 3B, 3C, 3D, and 3F, which we think we already addressed in the notes. Those are site plan changes that I don't think are problematic at all, and clarifications we can make. 3A raises a concern about a difference between sheet 2 and sheet 6. Frankly, I'm not sure why that's a concern. Sheet 6 is a planning plan. It shows plantings on the site. It's not an operative site plan for the property. So we agree it differs. That's not a surprise. But if there are concerns, please let us know what those concerns are, and we'll address those when we deliberate. 3E, which deals with fire alarm matters, and 4, which addresses the engineer's license. We think those are permitting questions. Those are not questions at this stage that the board needs to consider that should weigh at all on the determination the board makes about these findings of fact or whether to approve the amendment. I will say, as for the question about the engineer's expired license, we think this is a non-issue for 2 reasons. One is that the plans submitted are for a 2011 model. You see the date on those plans is 2011. And second, they were submitted for, conceptual or illustrative reasons. So, again, this permitting process will follow. We don't think that in any way is a bar to meeting our burden on any of these findings of fact. So how does this play into those findings of fact? Finding of fact 2 requires you to determine whether there's going to be any material danger to the public health or safety. All the safety considerations that have been identified by staff and the fire marshal that are appropriate for consideration at this stage have been included in the plan, or the applicant is willing to include them in the plan. Permitting will be dealt with when it needs to be dealt with, but there's nothing in the record at this point that you can rely on to suggest that there's any threat to the public health or safety in connection with this building. The applicant and the property owner are going to meet all applicable fire code and other safety requirements. You can be assured of that. They're putting kids in that building. Finding of fact number 3, that the conditional use meets all required conditions and specifications. We still heard 3 bases on which staff thinks this proposal does not meet all required conditions and specifications, and those 3 are the Curitin conditional use permit site plan, the Curitin design guidelines, and the future land use plan. Now, as for the Curitin specific requirements, we think that that's not a basis on which you can deny this amendment, for the reasons that I've discussed probably at length, you might say. I will note, as to the architectural standards, the applicant has agreed to architecturally screen the HVAC and utilities through some kind of painted lattice. They are willing to paint the units a color that the board thinks would be most appropriate. We're happy to do that. We committed to do that at the October 10th meeting. As for the land use plan, again, and I think we made this showing at the October 10th hearing, we don't think there's been any showing that this does not comply with your future land use plan, which speaks about allowing these uses to continue, but not inhibiting development into a compact, pedestrian-oriented, mixed-use center over time. Nothing about this interim use, I'll repeat, which is going to end no later than July 31st, 2019, prevents fulfillment of your future land use plan as it relates to this site. So you can rest assured that is not in any way an issue for this proposal. Finally, harmony. We've not heard anything new on that point, and if we think we made an adequate showing at the October 10th hearing that this use is in fact in harmony with the area and the plan of development of the town. I had mentioned section 9.22. I understand that this is still a source of some friction, but I think for purposes of analogy on the harmony question, I think it's very telling that putting this unit on this site, which has been approved for educational use, is necessarily going to be in harmony with what's around it. And that's all I will say on said point. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. We have the engineer here, Mr. Berkeley's here, Dr. Long is here as well. Again, with respectfully, we think we've met our burden on these 4 findings of fact, and as a result, that the board should approve this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
I have a question for Lisa. I look back at the building of what the 2002 they were supposed to look like. You said it was supposed to have a pitched roof and all that. The existing shopping center doesn't look anything like that. I mean, is there a different type of architectural requirement across the street where the Forest Hill Church is? I don't even think Forest Hill Church has that profile.
That was just an example. They don't have to look exactly like that, but that was just an example of how you could switch up the elevation every, I believe, was it 60 feet? But in your first packet from October 10th, was included tonight,
Right.
It goes through all the architectural guidelines.
Okay, so you can have a flat roof building, all the above, like,
The roof has to vary, and let me turn back to that slide.
I mean, I'm seeing at the Harris Teeter Shopping Center, and their roof doesn't vary. I mean, it's got a flat roof up there.
If you look at it, it does vary a little bit.
The facade does. I mean, the roof in the back doesn't. But, okay. Yeah.
So, this was just an example to show you that if it's over 60 feet in width on any elevation, that it has to vary. And I thought it was on that slide, but it's not. So I think it's every 30 feet.
Any other questions?
So Lisa, back to your memorandum then, on safety conditions for consideration 1 through 13, you feel like they have added to the notes to the plan, they have come in compliance, or they have agreed to those to your satisfaction?
Not
Yes.
13 safety consideration.
I'm sorry, no, there's 18, but I'm referring to number 1 through 13. I pick up at 14, 15, 16, and 17, 18 are architectural. They're not addressed, but I'm referring to 1 through 13.
So the safety conditions and the erosion control. Are you on the memo?
Yes, I'm on the memo, safety conditions.
Safety, and then you have erosion control. There's not 13 safety.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Yes. I'm sorry, so safety conditions 1 through 3, yes, have been met, and then erosion controls 4 through 13, those have been met also.
Yes, and then there was additional fire marshal comments. due to the new gravel drive, so I've added those to the.
Being able to hold the 70,000 GVW, the truck plus the water, okay. All right.
No further questions, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next up, we go to old business. Discussion. Action on the Curitan Town Center Modular Classroom Edition, CU 006-333-2017. This is a request by application by Union Day School. We've been through all that, so we don't need to read all that. We know what this is about, and it's time to deliberate and discuss. And I do want to clarify one point. Respectfully, I will, I have to disagree a little bit in terms of trying to compare and contrast this to other buildings, other schools. Fact of the matter is, this is sitting in an old C conditional use district, and we have to follow that law. And that's why we're here in the process. It's not because we just have a passion to sit through public hearings and things like that. So we all took an oath to uphold the law, and that's what we're doing, and that's why we're going through it. And I appreciate everybody's tolerance on this. Okay. What say ye?
You want me to ask my question I started to ask earlier? I guess it's finding of fact A, that the use requested is among those listed as an eligible condition. I understand from the attorney here that in 2002, this would be an acceptable use to put a school on that site according to what the conditions that were put on the site. Is that correct? I mean,
The testimony was that the use as a public school is allowed in that zoning district. That is correct.
okay, that's good. I like that. Now, the second one is finding of fact C. I mean, finding of fact B is not a big deal. I mean, it's not materially dangerous. He's made it safe. C, the conditional use meets all required conditions and specifications for this zoning from 2002. There's a lot of architectural restrictions that it's not going to meet.
That's true, and we can vote to say, hey, it's not, they're not going to be able to meet them. But does it materially change anything?
Well, I mean, it's only for 18 months. That's the biggest thing to me.
In their application, it's through the end of 2018, July 31st, 2018. It's only if they need to extend it. So you're really thinking about it from an application standpoint of 7 months. That's what the application says. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
plus a year. I mean, yeah.
7 months. We can't add our own judgment as to what may or may not happen by Union Day Charter School. We don't know their plans. Those are their plans. Right now, the application says end of July 2018, and that's what's in front of us. Am I missing something, Chaplain? I mean,
No, you're correct. And the applicant has said that the request is for you to modify those
right,
standards for a limited period.
right.
So that is the request to change and modify. It's an amendment to the CUP, and that's
Are
why
we
it has to come.
comfortable doing that?
And that's why it has to come before you.
That's right. That's right. Mayor Pro Tem Hahn.
So I have some clarification from Chaplain. You had mentioned at the beginning, or when we sat down this evening, the dates on the applications. What was the original application date submitted?
And I'm going from memory. Those aren't before you, but there was one of June 12th was a testimony. that was not completed, so that is not before you. And then there was another one from, testimony was July 14th of this summer that was granted, but that was a minor, so that did not come before you. And this one was submitted on August 30th, 2017, and this is the first one to come before you.
Okay.
And this is the only one that y'all are deciding on.
Right, and I got the date, okay. I feel that there's not relevance, I get that in relation to this decision being made, but there's relevance to the folks, citizens, parents, anybody, how this process played out. Because this is what this is, it's a process. It's following the UDO. What's being asked of us tonight is to say, I know Commissioner Warner just talked about it, does this follow the UDO or does it not? And if it does not, this board has the authority to make an amendment to the UDO based on the findings we find here tonight. The fact that this was originally submitted back in June is the first time that this board became aware of it. And when it was brought to us, my original statement has been the same since. Follow the process. We have a process. The process is the same for Union Day School, for any other applicant to modify or change the UDO as it's written, has it's approved by this board, and has it's approved by the citizens. And that's what gets us to where we are tonight. On the findings of facts, I know Commissioner Warner just stated his beliefs. My beliefs are, on A, the use is requested, the use requested is among those listed as an eligible conditional use in the district in which the subject property is located or to be located. Yes, it's been said, a school can be located there. I'm good with that. That the conditional use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located, where proposed and developed according to the plan as proposed. Yes, I'm good with that also, based on the fact that we've had our fire marshal, and there's still more permitting to go through to get that done. But again, this is a building that's designed for this type of use. I get that. That the conditional use meets all the required conditions and specifications. No, it does not, but that's what we're here to decide. Do we make an amendment? Do we get this through? And I'm okay with that also, to make that amendment. And lastly, that the location and character of the conditional use, if developed according to the plan as proposed, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located, in general conformity with the plan of development of Waxhaw and its environs. The last one I'm predicating on the fact that it's been discussed, or it's been presented as a temporary, as an interim. This is not an additional to Curitan. It's going to be a lifetime building. It's going to be part of the center from here on out. This is a temporary interim thing. And because of that, I also believe that that fits that also. And I would encourage my fellow commissioners to consider those options.
So are you ready to make a motion then?
I'll make sure that there's no other discussion.
We can deliberate and discuss it.
Discussion afterwards.
So yes, I'm willing to make a motion.
So you're willing to make
Ready to make a motion.
a motion to recommend approval of petition CU 00633-2017 with conditions.
With the conditions that were outlined outlined in the memorandum and discussed and approved or agreed to by
So
Okay,
point of clarity, we need to give them time to come back and confirm that they agree with the conditions.
They have already,
Are you, I don't want to speak for them. I want them to speak for themselves.
I think, just formally, we would like to just make sure we have the list complete and then take board action
Right.
to let you know whether we agree to those.
So would you list them out, Chaplain?
And Mr. Spencer and I can meet
Okay,
and we
that's
can
fine.
do that.
So you want to take a brief,
let's take a,
we'll take a
5-minute
5-minute recess.
And then you can
I think it could be very,
5-minute
brief.
recess.
Yeah.
Hi, if I may, I just need to call on the motion to go into closed session. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session for the meeting order. All those in favor? Aye.
Oh, yeah, there's school board. Duh. Did a good job, John. I like the way you put that. I like that.
Okay, let's resume our old business action. Chaplain, at this point in time, would you read through the conditions?
They're still confirming. There were
Okay.
4 conditions, and I'd like to have them here so they can confirm, so we get the agreed upon consent. I'm sorry.
No idea.
So Chaplain, for the purposes of the board, would you just verify for us what the conditions are? So we have them?
Yes, comply with all laws and regulations. To paint the modular unit color consistent with the surroundings as agreed upon by the church, the applicant, and planning staff. Screen the HVAC with lattice or plant material. And then just confirm that the units will be removed by July 31st, 2018, or if properly extended, July 31st, 2019. And all the others are included in the plan.
Included in the plan.
And I'll summarize that as well. And they are just going to confirm these conditions so they have proper authority.
Right. Commissioner Fitzgerald, you had mentioned you wanted to say some things?
Yes, I too are in agreement with my other 2 colleagues here on the board. I think that the architectural standards do not meet or even get close to meeting what the purpose of a shopping center is. But the use was granted way back when for a school, and therefore, I think that my feeling is that it should be granted as long as they approve these conditions on that case. Also would like to thank Union Day School for going through the process. The process I know is argumental and hard to go through, but we have a process, therefore it's for everyone, and that's how a democratic society works. Thank you.
I think that's why CUP was eliminated in 2009. But Chaplain, you want to go through the conditions again and gain the applicant's approval?
Okay. The testimony earlier was that there were a lot of public health and safety and regulatory conditions that were incorporated into the plans. Those are already in the plans. The plans were modified, so that is a part of their application. So they'll comply with their plans because that's part of your approval. And then what we have are several other conditions. One is to comply with all laws, rules, and regulations. Actually, it's in our UDO. 2, that addresses the concerns of some of the permitting requirements, some of the engineering standards. So it alleviates that concern from y'all that it's also required. 2, paint the exterior of the modular unit a color consistent with the surroundings as agreed upon by the applicant, the church, and staff. 3, to screen the HVAC units with lattice or with plant material. And 4, just a confirmation that the modular units will be removed on or before July 31st, 2018, unless there's a properly granted extension, and that would last up until July 31st, 2019, upon which time they would be removed. So the plans, and first, do y'all have any questions, or does that summarize what y'all had desired for the conditions? If that's the case, we need to get confirmation from the applicant that they consent with those 4 supplemental conditions.
And I can confirm on behalf of both the school and the church that they agree to comply with those conditions.
Thank you.
So therefore, the plans, as you go through your four findings, would be the plans that were submitted and amended that have all of the additional conditions and these supplemental conditions. But at the end, if you grant, you still go through and add those four conditions, because they're supplemental conditions, they aren't part of the grant. I know it's a little confusing, but that's the way it has been done, and it confirms everything. So I think that puts it back in y'all's court to have motions and deliberate in each of the four findings.
So we have a motion with the conditions as outlined, correct?
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it, 4-0. Now we have to do the conditions
Well, no, you need to go through the four findings.
first? Now?
Yes.
Okay.
So you just go through each of the four findings.
So can I make a group motion on the findings?
I like to do them individually.
Okay.
And then after that, I recommend, if all four are granted in the affirmative, then you would make a motion to grant with the conditions, and you can read those four out or have me read those four out.
All right. I make a motion that we find on the finding of fact that the use requested is among those listed as an eligible conditional use in the district in which the subject property is located or is to be located.
A motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. I make a motion that the conditional use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as proposed.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. I make a motion that the conditional use meets all required conditions and specifications. And.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. I make a motion that the location and character of the conditional use, if developed according to the plan as proposed, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with the plan of development of Waxhaw and its environs.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to recommend approval of the petition with the conditions as outlined by the attorney and agreed to by the applicant.
That's fine.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Reasonableness and
Yep.
consistency.
That statement so I can read it. Thank you. I make a motion that the major conditional use permit amendment requested is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future planning goals of the town of Waxhaw, is reasonable and in the public interest as it has been presented.
And that is because it will allow for a temporary development and use for a school and be removed upon a time, and there have been architectural revisions. You have to state some reasons.
Right. As what you said, it's going to be, for use as a school, it's going to be and again, back to a temporary interim structure that has a date of removal agreed to by this board and the applicant, with the additional consideration for an extension if the process is followed.
And the architectural revisions they agreed to.
And the agreed architectural revisions as stated by the attorney.
We have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All passed 4-0. Chaplain, how do you want to handle, in the interest of, since we're 3 weeks from a meeting?
Yes, you and I discussed this earlier.
Historically, we put he writes up the written decision, it goes on the next consent agenda. But to accelerate the process, how do you want to handle that?
If the board is inclined, we always put it on consent agenda. It's a form written decision, but it does need to be documented. And there have been statutory revisions, including the Board of Adjustment, that allows the chair now to sign those. So if the board is inclined, they could authorize you to execute the agreement consistent with prior written decisions and the findings and decision made before the board, and you can sign that, and then it will be done.
And that gives them the legal document to move ahead and not wait for 3 weeks, which is the intent here.
Correct.
So I make a motion that this board allows the mayor to sign the written findings from this meeting this evening and the approval when it's prepared to move this process forward prior to our next meeting.
All those in, we have a motion. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. All right. We're moving on to new business. And we will give everybody a chance to exit the building. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Will.
Good applaud now.
We're going to take a quick 5-minute recess while people evacuate the premises. He's never contacted me, and I'm not asking. Go ahead and resume. Next up, under new business, grant opportunity for playground equipment. Dina Sabinski from Parks and Rec.
Good evening. I just wanted to give a quick save the date before I go into my presentation. We actually have our Fright Night coming up this Saturday night. Please join us downtown for a multitude of events starting at 4 o'clock. The kid times are from 4 to 8, and then we go into more adult entertainment from 8 to 11. Please join us downtown. We've got information up on the website, and our social media staff will be sending out some more information as we go throughout the week. Then we also save the date for November the 18th. We're having a kickball tournament out at Nesbitt. That information is also going to be up on the website soon, and the WAA website to look for registration there. Love to have teams come out, and we'll have a good game of kickball that day. Right, I'm here tonight to talk about some grant opportunities. The Build It Yourself Kaboom grant is available for playground equipment. Their grant is $15,000 with their minimum of purchasing of $24,000. Our commitment would be around $9,000 for the purchase of the equipment. Now, this doesn't include installment, and I did put an estimate on installment with that, and that would include the certification of the playground after it's installed. Timeline. The grant application is due on February the 17th. The award date actually is not that far off from that date. It's in the end of April. Usually it takes a little bit longer for you to understand if you got the grant or not, so that's pretty cool. If we are awarded the grant, we have up to 12 months to install the equipment and get it in place. They do have about 4 different playground companies that they require that we use. I've actually personally worked with 2 of them in the past and impressed with their equipment. So we would move forward on design and to get the equipment in place. This grant actually encourages community involvement. I know that's a big mission on our part to do that, and we would be committed to having the community involved in building the equipment under the supervision of the site manager and the playground certification. So I've already come to y'all about wanting to build that volunteer base. This would help build that base and get the community involved and have a stake in building their parks. Any questions?
Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem Hunt?
So the Build It Yourself part comes in, that's what I was trying to figure out. This is like a neighborhood, a group effort, parents, anybody, children want to come along, and then the $10,000 would go into the site manager and the certified playground installer being on site to then say, yes, all the bolts are tightened to the correct, yes, all the dimensions are.
That's part of it, yes, sir. But the main part is like the foundation part of it, the mulch, the just making sure the site is prepared. That's part of that 10.
Okay.
Other questions?
So I guess you're looking for a budget item of $19,000, is that what I saw?
Yes, sir. I'm asking for y'all's support for us to go for this grant. It's 15 free money, though, is what I'm looking at.
So nearly a 50-50 matching grant,
Yes, sir.
45-55.
Pretty much, yeah.
And the difference between the minimum purchase of $24,000 versus the maximum, what are you talking, a couple more slides, a couple more swings?
It depends on the unit. We were wanting to place this particular unit at Town Creek to finish out that park. The size depends on the pricing. So the more bells and whistles you have on it, the bigger the price tag is going to be on it. We are putting 3 kind of pod playgrounds in that park, and it would probably be like a middle size kind of playground. That's the reason why I gave you the 24.
And I can say the only kiddie park that we have is the downtown park right now, correct?
Yes, sir. That's the only
That's a long ways.
playground offering we have at this moment in time. Yes, sir.
That's a long ways to travel for a lot of moms.
Yes, sir.
So then,
How do we need to state this motion?
I think it's pretty straightforward. Right
Just
now, we're
Motion to approve?
motion in support of staff applying for the grant at this point in time. I mean, it's basically right up there on the screen. So I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve for staff to make actions for this grant. And I also would like to make the comment of thank you very much. I think community involvement is big key for people to take ownership in their parks and in their town. And I've seen this used in other towns, in municipalities, and even school systems, and it's a fantastic program.
So we have a motion to support staff applying for the grant. Just one quick question. Any paperwork, letters of recommendation required from the board that you'll need, and how quickly do you need them?
We're working through the, actually, Ms. Melanie is helping me through this process. We're working through the application right now.
Okay.
The first thing we need is for y'all to give the okay for us to move forward.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson, policy establishing guidelines for funding nonprofit organizations.
The previous budget discussion, there was deliberation about the process to be used for external appropriations outside of nonprofit agencies. And the board asked the manager's office to come back with a recommendation as to maybe a different policy, a different direction than what had been followed in the past. The board in the budget process also moved to limit some future expansion of the total dollars expended in this fiscal year. So there was a reduction in the request for some of the outside agencies that requested funding. You also direct the staff to work on contracting or agreements with two agencies that the town provides services for, and the agencies provide some in-kind things back to the town. So we have accomplished one of those with the Women's Club. We're still ongoing work with the Museum of Waxhaw. So we wanted to work a policy to you that would both acknowledge that there is a limitation in total funding, and there is a process for that, but also, sorry about that, the outside agencies that are providing services, that we do work toward a contract with them. So this draft language has both processes in it for having contracts with outside agencies, and then also having a process with a cap on it. And you'll notice that there's a dollar cap, and there's a maximum per agency that would be adhered to if those are the dollar figures that you choose to include in the policy. So it's a framework. We're really not tied specifically to the dollar figures, but that's a much lower threshold, and will keep it more manageable over the years, and really would put a maximum cap on how much you might be asked for more, but it would be an expectation that you would not be funding more. So that would limit that exposure in the future.
Okay. First of all, I think you brought back to the board what we had asked for, and especially, I think you did the team did a very nice job on the criteria, narrowing it down to, if you're asking for something, you're going to be the citizens served by the organization of Waxhaw, and how well the services match the needs of the citizens. All those are very good criteria statements. Questions for the manager? Questions or a motion?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I know when we talked about this during the budget before and after, and I know I talked to quite a few people, citizens in the town, quite a few emails, and I think the whole board received a lot of emails on the opinions of not doing this anymore, and based on the fact that we're using taxpayer everyone's collectively packed taxpayers' dollars to give to charities of the choice of the board, rather than an individual given to the charity of their choice. So I still agree with that opinion of the people.
Other comments, questions? What do you want to do with this?
I mean, I read through it, and it seems very even-handed, and do I make a motion that we adopt it as presented? I mean, is that what we're asking for here, or? I'll make that motion.
Okay. We have a motion to adopt policy establishing guidelines for funding of nonprofit organizations as presented in the board packet. Any further discussion? So if I read this right, you've narrowed it down to no more than $10,000
That's correct.
for the year, and no more than $2,000 to any single nonprofit, and it's going to be based upon how the number of Waxhaw citizens served by the organization. So, for instance, I know the police department works with a couple of these agencies and actually share some work, and so that kind of criteria is what you're aiming at. Where are we getting some additional support where we might otherwise not get it? All right. Any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem Hahn.
Not necessarily a question, but more in line of a statement along with Commissioner Burns. So when we did this year, we also talked about looking to come up with agreements amongst other folks. And the mayor just mentioned the ones that the police department deal with specifically. Name escapes me right off the top of my mind, Chief. Turning Point for, right, for the battered women, children, so forth.
Treehouse is if we have a sexual assault on a child.
Okay. Have we given any consideration to establishing an agreement with them?
I think that would be a next step, because Turning Point in particular is one organization that this year was granted over what would be the $2,000 maximum. Their number was 4,000 and change, so they would be impacted to draw that number down. The other organizations were all in the $2,000 range, so they really wouldn't have, if the same amount of funding was proposed and agreed to, not that much impact. But Turning Point probably is one that we could look at an agreement of some sort for the services rendered, and reduce that to something we would bring back for approval.
Other questions, comments? If not, we have a motion on the table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
So 2 for, 2 against? Okay. So then I guess I vote, and I will vote for this. So 3-2. Next up, item,
Could I ask, could we direct the town manager to make that agreement with Turning Point at this time?
I think we could have consensus that as part of this next cycle to look at the organizations that we could have agreement. I don't know if Turning Point's the most logical one or not. I'd want staff to look at that and make that assessment, bring it back.
We'll do that.
Okay, next up, initiation of voluntary annexation petition 18-221. This is a request by Tim Melton for annexation of approximately 1.33 acres, consisting of parcel 06159-003A, located at 2418 Providence Road South. I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution directing the town clerk to investigate annexation petition 18-221.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Town Clerk, can you verify that the petition was investigated and is sufficient?
Yes, the application has been reviewed and is sufficient, and you're good to go.
Okay. Then at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve a resolution scheduling the public hearing for November 14th, 2017 at 6:30 PM in the Police Department Community Room, 3620 Providence Road South.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. With that, we have no other topics. We have no reason to go into closed session, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.